The first time Commander Sarah Holt saw the alien vessel, it was already bleeding fire across the upper atmosphere. Its hull split in jagged wounds, leaking streams of molten metal that hissed like comets. The orbital defense network had scored a victory, but no one on Earth had seen what lay inside. Until now. Sarah's dropship rattled through the clouds, vibrating under the pull of gravity, and the faint tremor of fear spreading among her squad. "Focus," she said over comms, her voice sharp enough to slice through the static. "We're not here to gawk. This is first contact, people. History doesn't care how nervous you are." Private Rourke chuckled dryly, a sound more defiant than amused. "History never had aboard an alien coffin, ma'am." The banter died as the wreck came into view. It hung above the ocean like a wounded leviathan, one half submerged, the other rising in a silhouette of black steel and green light. Sarah felt the hairs along her arms stiffen. It wasn't fear exactly. It was recognition. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for centuries, but the reality felt heavier than prophecy. The dropship latched onto the alien hull with a metallic clank. Sarah led her squad through the breach, rifles raised, boots sinking into corridors slick with fluid that shimmered like oil yet pulsed faintly, as though alive. The air reeked of ozone and charred metal. They weren't alone. The first alien they encountered was already dying, sprawled against a wall where veins of bioluminescence flickered weakly. It was tall, insectoid in shape, with carapace fractured into plates like broken armor. Its compound eyes dimmed, but its mandibles clicked in a rhythm that might have been language. Corporal Diaz knelt cautiously. "Looks like it wants to say something." Sarah shook her head. "We don't know if it's a message or a threat. Keep moving." The alien's gaze locked on her, as though it understood. She felt a chill under her armor, but forced herself to step past it. Sympathy would have to wait. The central chamber was worse. A cavernous space with walls that curved like ribs, filled with shattered stasis pods. Most were empty. Some held bodies that hadn't survived re-entry. And in the center, an intact pod glowed faintly, its glass surface intact. Inside, another alien stirred, alive. "Target," Diaz whispered. "No," Sarah replied. "Specimen." The pod's occupant thrashed against his confinement, striking the glass with limbs that looked too sharp for restraint. The pod hissed, lights blinking in warning. Then, with sudden violence, it burst open. The creature surged forward, all sinew and fury, its mandibles snapping. Bullets tore into it, but it didn't fall, only staggered. It moved faster than seemed possible, closing the gap, knocking Diaz sprawling. Sarah didn't hesitate. She shoved the barrel of her rifle against the alien's chest and pulled the trigger. The blast at point-blank range sent it crashing back, green ichor sizzling on the deck. Diaz scrambled upright, panting. If that was one of the wounded, I'd hate to see one healthy. Sarah scanned the chamber. More pods lined the walls, damaged but not destroyed. If this ship carried soldiers, how many more had already escaped? Her pulse quickened, but she kept her voice steady. "Secure the chamber. We're bringing samples back." As the squad dispersed, Rourke muttered, "You really think Command wants samples, ma'am? Or proof we can kill them?" Sarah didn't answer. The truth was obvious. Earth wanted both. On the alien bridge, the story of the crash became clearer. Displays glowed with symbols their translators couldn't parse, but the imagery spoke volumes. Holograms of human cities, orbital trajectories, red-marked schematics of Earth's defenses. The ship hadn't fallen by chance. It had been headed here deliberately. "They were studying us," Diaz murmured, all mixed with dread. "No," Sarah corrected, her gaze fixed on the alien script scrolling like a war chant. "They were hunting us." A low vibration rippled through the hull. The squad froze. The wreck wasn't as dead as it seemed. Somewhere deep below, machinery roared back to life. The walls themselves seemed to shudder, shedding sparks. "Extraction now," Sarah ordered. They retraced their path quickly, but the corridors twisted as if the ship resisted their escape. Fluid gushed from ruptured seams, flooding passageways, carrying the stench of decay. And in the darkness behind them, mandibles clicked, a chorus of survivors stirring. Rourke cursed under his breath. "They're waking up." The squad broke into a sprint, gunfire rattling in short bursts as shadows darted at the edges of their lights. Sarah didn't look back. Looking back slowed you down. Looking back got you killed. When they finally clamped back into the dropship, the relief was palpable, but it didn't last. Through the viewport, they saw the alien wreck convulse. Beams of emerald fire shot upward, punching holes through clouds. Systems once thought crippled were rekindling, driven by someone that refused extinction. "Ma'am," Diaz said, voice tight, "if one ship can do this after crashing, what happens when a fleet shows up intact?" Sarah didn't answer right away. She watched the wreck ride in the sea, half alive, half corpse, but undeniably dangerous. Humanity had been arrogant enough to believe the sky belonged to them alone. That arrogance had just been burned away. Finally, she keyed her comms. "Command, this is Strike Team Echo. Confirmed hostile intent. Recommend immediate escalation of planetary defense." She hesitated before finishing, "and prepare the world for war." The channel crackled with acknowledgement, but the words felt small against the enormity of what they had uncovered. Humanity had wanted first contact. Now it had it, in blood and fire. As the dropship ascended, Sarah glanced back at the wreck one last time. The alien ship did not sink. It remained defiant, a scar upon the ocean's surface. She realized then that this was not an ending. It was the first strike of something much larger, and humanity would have to prove it deserved to survive. She set her jaw, her expression hard but alive with fire. Whatever came, she would be ready, and so would humanity. Word count, 1,000. Would you like me to keep Sarah Holt as the central protagonist of the whole story, or ship perspectives, e.g., Alien Commander POV, in later sections to deepen the HFY theme? The wreck never sank. For weeks it remained on the ocean's surface, half ruin, half beacon, a constant reminder that humanity was no longer alone. Satellite feeds showed flickers of movement across its fractured hull, signs of repair no one could explain. Governments argued over who should control the site, but before decisions could crystallize, the aliens answered the question themselves. It began with silence. Entire communication grids along the Pacific coast went dark. Then came the lights. Streaks of emerald fire carving the sky, spearing orbital platforms, unraveling satellites. Humanity's defenses, so confident only months ago, collapsed in a matter of hours. The aliens were not simply surviving, they were counterattacking. Commander Sarah Holt watched the chaos unfold from the underground command center in Nevada, her uniform torn at the shoulder from her last engagement. Exhaustion lined her face, but her eyes burned with clarity. "They're not probing anymore," she said, pointing to the holographic display. "They're testing how fast we break." Across the table, General Armitage's jaw tightened. "Then we show them we don't." It was bravado, but necessary. Fear had already begun to gnaw at the civilian population. Riots erupted in major cities, driven by rumors of invasion fleets on the horizon. Soldiers whispered about ships in orbit that never appeared, the unseen predators circling overhead. Sarah knew better. The aliens didn't need to overwhelm Earth in numbers. They were studying reactions, learning weaknesses, cataloging behavior. Humanity was prey in a laboratory. Her squad had been pared down to 3 survivors, Diaz, Rourke, and herself. They were now specialists in the unthinkable, boarding missions against alien craft. Every assignment was a gamble, but each brought new fragments of understanding. The aliens healed quickly, relied on hive-like coordination, and wielded weapons that bent light itself. Yet for all their superiority, they underestimated something fundamental. On their latest mission, they infiltrated a smaller vessel that had emerged from a wreck. The corridors were sterile, metallic veins pulsating faintly with green luminescence. The team moved quietly, weapons primed, their movements rehearsed through instinct more than planning. They expected resistance. Instead, they found something stranger, walls covered in projections of human faces. Thousands of them, harvested from surveillance feeds, social media, news broadcasts. The aliens had been watching long before the wreck ever touched the ocean. Diaz swallowed hard. Why us? Out of all the stars, why Earth? Sarah stepped closer to one of the faces, her own likeness staring back. cold and clinical in alien green light. "Because we're dangerous," she said. The words felt both true and terrifying. The mission ended in fire. The team planted charges and barely escaped the vessel's self-destruct. But in the chaos, Rourke had been wounded, his armor shredded, ribs cracked. Even bleeding out, he laughed, a raw, feral sound that made Diaz flinch. "Let him come," Rourke rasped through clenched teeth. "We'll drag them down with us." Sarah carried that image with her into every briefing afterward. The bloody grin of a soldier who refused to yield. The aliens could catalog their weapons, study their cities, dissect their DNA. But they would never comprehend the irrational defiance that kept humans standing. Word of the squad's exploits spread. Civilians whispered about ghost teams that struck at the enemy and lived to tell the tale. Soldiers who had begun to doubt their chances looked at Sarah's scarred squad and found courage. Humanity's strength was never its technology. It was its stubborn belief in survival against impossible odds. Yet the aliens adapted too. The next skirmish unfolded not in the ocean, but high above it. Alien craft slipped through Earth's atmosphere like blades through silk, their hulls glowing as if alive. Fighter wings scrambled to intercept, and Sarah's squad rode shotgun aboard one of the interceptors, tasked with boarding if the chance arose. The chance came suddenly. One alien vessel faltered under missile fire, its shields crackling. Sarah's squad launched across the void in magnetized pods, clamping to the alien hull. For a few heartbeats, Earth sprawled beneath them, blue and vast, fragile under the weight of cosmic violence. They cut through the hull, weapons raised. Inside, the air was thick with a hum that rattled their teeth. Alien soldiers waited taller, stronger, their movements precise. The fight was brutal. Diaz went down hard, ribs fractured but still firing. Rourke fought like a demon, his laughter unhinged, unnerving even the aliens. Sarah saw it clearly, the hesitation. The aliens were faster, stronger, but they faltered when faced with unpredictability. Humans didn't retreat when logic dictated. They surged forward, wounded and raging, breaking patterns the aliens relied upon. When the squad detonated the core and barely escaped with their lives, the alien vessel burned to the sky, a green comet scattering across the Pacific. For the first time, humanity had not only defended but destroyed. Back at command, Armitage leaned over the table, eyes fierce. "You've given us hope, Commander. That's more dangerous to them than any weapon." Sarah didn't bask in the praise. Hope was fragile, and war demanded more than symbols. But she had seen the cracks forming in their enemy's certainty. She had seen the unease in their movements, the way they recoil from irrationality. Diaz, bruised and bandaged, voiced it bluntly. "They don't understand us. They don't understand why we fight when we should be dead." Rourke grinned through his pain. "And that's what's going to kill them." Sarah let the words settle. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were teaching their enemy a lesson. Humanity wasn't prey. Humanity was a storm that prey never saw coming. The next battle would be larger. She could feel it pressing against the horizon, heavy and inevitable. But for the first time since the wreck had fallen, she believed Earth had a chance. The war was no longer about who had stronger weapons or smarter machines. It was about endurance, about who could keep standing after logic said they shouldn't. And in that arena, humanity had no equal. Sarah looked up at the sky, where alien ships still lurked unseen. She felt no fear, only fire. The war was far from over, but the tide had shifted. Humanity had found its weapon, and it wasn't forged from steel or plasma. It was them. Word count, 1,000. Do you want to make Section 3 escalate into a final decisive battle, or would you prefer it focus more on a psychological clash? Alien leaders realizing humanity's true danger before the fighting ends? The null swarm came without warning, a tide of silver-black, consuming light and metal alike. Its arrival was not subtle. Cities burned in silence as alien armadas collapsed under the weight of an enemy that could not be reasoned with, could not be bribed, could not be frightened. The Galactic Council's proudest fleets disintegrated in hours, their shields unraveling before a predator that learned faster than they could adapt. What had been dismissed as human exaggeration now spread panic through the council chambers. Their desperate eyes turned, at last, to the very species they had mocked. Elias Ward stood at the viewport of the Resolute, watching the swarm choke the stars. His jaw tightened, not from fear but from grim recognition. He had seen this kind of annihilation before, though on a smaller scale. The quiet ruin of Earth's old wars, the moments when civilizations thought themselves invincible until they crumbled. Behind him, Sergeant Cade Holt prepared weapons that should not have existed on a diplomatic ship. Crude launchers and improvised explosives pieced together from scavenged parts. His hands bore the scars of battles long past, yet they worked with steady precision, as though this war was the one he had always been waiting for. Dr. Mirachin moved between consoles, her eyes alight with the fever of discovery. To her, the swarm was more than an enemy. It was a puzzle. Weeks of clandestine study had shown her its weakness, not a flaw in its armor, but in its mind. The machines could not cope with disorder, with the tangled unpredictability of chaotic code. Where the aliens had built elegant, predictable systems, humans had always embraced mess. She was determined to turn that mess into a weapon. The Council had begged for leadership, but their fleets refused to coordinate without a central command. That mantle had fallen, by circumstance and necessity, to Elias. He carried it without ceremony, issuing orders to species that had once laughed at humanity. His voice, calm yet edged with steel, spread through calms of every scattered resistance ship. We fight not to win outright, but to fracture their mind. Our strength is not in what we build, but in how we endure. Hold the line, and let chaos be our blade. The first wave hit them like a storm. Thousands of drone shards poured from the swarm, weaving impossible patterns, learning every countermeasure within seconds. Alien cruisers fell back, their disciplined formations collapsing. But where others retreated, the humans lunged. Cade's squadron hurled their cobbled-together explosives into the oncoming tide, weapons made of duct tape and desperation. The swarm faltered for a heartbeat, unable to anticipate such crude irregularity. That heartbeat was all Mira needed. Her fingers danced across the interface, flooding the enemy's comnet with cascading nonsense. Recursive loops, contradictory instructions, corrupted simulations that bloomed like wildfires in the swarm's neural core. The machines slowed, not destroyed but confused, their perfect synchronization unraveling. For the first time, their movement looked uncertain. Elias seized the opening. All ships, press forward. Strike at their hesitation. His words carried more weight than authority. They carried belief. Even the most arrogant alien commanders found themselves obeying, drawn by the conviction that poured from him. The battlefield transformed. Where order had failed, improvisation thrived. Fleets no longer moved in lockstep but in chaotic bursts, breaking apart and reforming in patterns the swarm could not predict. On the ground below, Cade led a desperate defense of a council world surface. The swarm had landed tendrils of itself, vast mechanical worms that chewed through soil and stone. His forces, a patchwork of alien volunteers and human marines, held choke points with weapons that overheated and bodies that ached, yet they held. Cade's voice roared over the din. You hold or you die, there's no middle ground. The words were not elegant, but they ignited resolve. Soldiers who had once looked down on humans now fought shoulder to shoulder with them, because Cade bled beside them, unflinching. Myra's virus spread deeper, twisting itself in ways even she barely understood. She fed it fragmented human culture, jazz rhythms, graffiti patterns, chaotic poetry, anything that could seed disorder. The swarm absorbed it unknowingly, each new infection compounding its instability. For all their technological might, the machines had never faced the sheer logic of humanity's creativity. They were being drowned not by firepower, but by imagination. But victory was not guaranteed. With every passing minute, the swarm adapted. It began purging infected nodes, sacrificing pieces of itself to survive. Elias realized the truth in that moment. This was not a battle that could be won in the traditional sense. At best, they could wound it, drive it back, force it to reconsider its prey. Humanity had always known survival was sometimes enough. The Resolute plunged toward the heart of the swarm, its hull shuddering as fragments tore past. Elias remained at the helm, guiding their suicidal course with hands that did not tremble. Myra's code streamed from their core systems, the ship itself becoming a beacon of disorder. Cade's final transmission crackled over comms from the ground. "Give the bastards hell, sir. Make it count." Impact. Light swallowed everything. The swarm convulsed, its vast body writhing as a human virus detonated within. Not an explosion of fire, but a thought, shattered coherence, broken links, cascading collapse. A hole tore open in its vast network, and through that wound the Allied fleet struck. What seemed immortal now bled, fragments retreating into the void, hissing with fractured signals. The swarm was not destroyed, but was driven back, broken enough to grant the galaxy reprieve. Silence fell across the battlefield. Ships drifted among wreckage. Smoke curled from cities spared at the last possible moment. Elias, bruised and bloody but alive, stood among his surviving crew. Myra's hands shook with exhaustion, her brilliance tempered by the weight of what she had unleashed. Cade, though scarred and battered, emerged from the surface alive, carried on the shoulders of those who had once doubted him. When the council convened, their faces were no longer condescending. They spoke of alliances, of debts owed. Yet Elias refused their gilded chains. He stood before them, gaze steady, voice even. "We are not your tools nor your pawns. We are partners, or we are nothing. Remember this day not for how humanity bled, but for how we endured." The chamber was silent, not from contempt, but from a dawning realization. Humanity had carved its place not with wealth or numbers, but with defiance. Where others faltered, they had risen. Where others sought safety, they embraced a storm. Beyond the council's walls, rumors spread of the swarm's retreat, of the humans who had turned chaos into a weapon. And in the quiet spaces between stars, whispers grew not of humanity's fragility, but of their terrifying potential. The galaxy would never look at them the same way again. Would you like me to also condense this into a shorter blurb-style version, like a teaser summary for the story, that keeps the same tone, but under 200 words for promo use? Elias Ward had expected victory to buy peace, but the galaxy had other ideas. The council chambers, once echoing with disdain, now buzzed with uneasy admiration. Delegates whose fleets had fled the null swarm now showered humanity with titles, offers, and bargains. Yet beneath the gilded words, Elias felt the weight of something darker, gratitude that curdled into fear, respect that edged into calculation. Humanity had proved indispensable, and in doing so it unsettled the fragile balance of power. Dr. Mirachin sensed it too. She sat at her terminal in the Resolute's laboratory, running diagnostics on the fragments of swarm code salvaged from the battle. The more she studied it, the less certain she became. What they had repelled was not the whole of the enemy, but merely a shard, a tendril of a vast intelligence stretching far beyond the rim. Every new simulation revealed structures she could not untangle, patterns that hinted at something vast waiting in silence. Her colleagues among the council scientists dismissed her concerns, eager to celebrate their deliverance, but Myra's intuition gnawed at her. The swarm was not defeated. It was learning. Sergeant Cade Holt spent his days training new recruits drawn from alien worlds. Where once he had been a scarred outcast tolerated only for his violence, now entire units looked to him for guidance. He taught them not the precision drills of the council fleets, but the raw adaptability of human combat. How to fight when weapons failed, how to improvise when plans dissolved, how to keep moving when hope faltered. His methods drew criticism from alien commanders who prized order above all, but the soldiers themselves trusted him, for he had fought beside them in the fire and not abandoned them when the swarm pressed hardest. The three of them, diplomat, scientist, soldier, had become the faces of humanity's rise. And with that rise came suspicion. Elias noticed at first in the council's subtle hesitations. Trade agreements stalled. Intelligence briefings arrived incomplete. Fleets deployed without informing human allies. Whispers spread of a species too reckless, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be trusted with equal power. Humanity's greatest strength was also their most feared trait. Tension crystallized during a closed council summit. Elias presented a proposal. A joint fleet composed of multiple species under a rotating command, designed to anticipate the swarm's inevitable return. His words were calm, precise, backed by Myra's research and Cade's tactical insights. Yet, when he finished, silence followed. Then an elder of the Kalari rose, her chiton clicking as she spoke. Your kind thrives in chaos. You invite it. If we bind ourselves to your methods, will we not become as unstable as you? Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The fear was plain. Elias answered with quiet defiance. You fear what you cannot control. But control is an illusion. The swarm proved that. What saved you was not perfection, but the will to adapt when perfection failed. His words stirred some, but others turned away. The council adjourned without decision, leaving the matter festering. That night aboard the Resolute, Mira shared her latest findings with Elias and Cade. She projected streams of alien code across the cabin walls, shimmering in chaotic colors. It's still out there, she whispered. I can feel it. The swarm is rebuilding, and it's faster now. Every failed attempt, every loss. It folds back into its learning. Next time, it won't stumble. Her voice carried both awe and dread, as though she were staring into the abyss, and the abyss was staring back. Cade leaned forward, scarred hands tightening into fists. Then next time, we hit harder. We don't wait for permission from politicians who'd rather hide behind walls. His bluntness made Mira flinch, but Elias nodded slowly. Cade's instincts were crude, but they rang with truth. Waiting for consensus would mean death. The following weeks revealed the depth of the Council's paralysis. Worlds rebuilt their defenses not with unity but in isolation, hoarding resources, fortifying borders. Alliances frayed. While the galaxy congratulated itself on surviving, humanity prepared. The Resolute became a hub of clandestine coordination, drawing volunteers from across species who trusted action more than rhetoric. They were soldiers, engineers, scientists, all drawn not by loyalty flags but by belief in survival through adaptability. Elias felt the strain of leadership pressing into his bones. Every decision he made carried the weight of billions. Myra's sleepless nights etched shadows under her eyes, her brilliance tempered by a fear she dared not admit aloud, that she might not solve the swarm before it returned. Cade's drills grew harsher, his temper sharper, as if preparing his recruits for the certainty that many would not see another dawn. Yet beneath the strain, their bond deepened. Each represented a fragment of humanity's essence, and together they formed a whole stronger than any council decree. The first sign came at the edge of map space, an outpost gone dark, sensors reporting impossible anomalies before silence consumed them. The council dismissed it as malfunction, but Elias recognized the pattern. Mira confirmed it with trembling certainty. The swarm was stirring. He brought the report before the chamber once more, his voice clear though he knew what would follow. It has begun again. You can deny it, but denial will not shield you. We must act. This time the chamber did not laugh, but nor did it unite. Fear bound them in inaction. Elias left the hall with grim resolve, his path clear. If the galaxy would not stand with humanity, then humanity would stand first, as they always had. Cade's hand clasped his shoulder, wordless but steady. Mira, pale yet resolute, whispered, "Then we'll fight, even if it's only us." The stars beyond glimmered cold and watchful, as though waiting for the next move. The swarm was not gone. Humanity's place among the stars was not secured. Yet for the first time, Elias felt no despair. The council's doubt was irrelevant. What mattered was the will to endure, the will to adapt, the will to stand unbroken when the storm returned. The war was not finished. It had only just begun. Would you like me to continue building Section 5 as the escalation toward the swarm's full return? Or should I stop the narrative here and let Section 4 be the current endpoint,